Waiting for a red light or?
Yeah. Hopefully, wait, yep, there you go.
Perfect.
You ask.
Receive.
Good evening, everybody. We'll call this November 13th, 2024 Chaska City Planning Commission meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Yep. Commissioner Austin,
Here.
Boswa,
Here.
Brass, Campbell,
Here.
Gory,
Here.
Kerber, here, Olson,
Here.
Purdy, and Vice Chair.
Here. All right, call is made. Do we have any additions or anything being removed from the agenda? Nothing? All right, make a motion or I'll accept the motion to adopt the agenda.
Make a motion to adopt agenda.
Motion by Olson.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adopt the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Visitor presentation now. So if you have something that you'd like to discuss that is not on the agenda tonight, we've got time for that right now. Anybody online that we could see? All right, perfect. We'll then move on to item number 5, our approval of previous meeting minutes from the October 9th, 2024 Chaska Planning Commission meeting.
Were they posted? Were they actually attached to the packet?
Should have been. Did you not see him in there?
No, I didn't see them in there.
I
Okay.
didn't see them either.
Mhm.
Interesting. We carry that over to the next meeting?
We can,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's what we'll have to do.
We need a motion for that or?
I think
What, yeah.
effectively you're not making a motion.
I
Then.
think maybe what you could do just to formalize it is just say motion to carry the October meeting minutes into the December meeting.
Mhm.
And that'll be in the record and then we can,
Somebody make that motion?
I'll make a motion to carry the October 9th Planning Commission minutes to the December meeting.
Second?
A second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Move into number 6, consent items, which we have none tonight. Which brings us to our one action item tonight, number 7, public hearing, recommended denial of a major variance for 2979 Hilltop Drive to encroach into the rear yard setback for Joe and Michelle Heiland, PC number 2024-19.
Am I screen up there?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right. We've got a request this evening for a major variance for the address at 2979 Hilltop Drive. This is being requested by the property owners, Joe and Michelle Heiland. And it's specifically for a variance request to deviate from the rear yard setback that applies to their lot, which is per section 15.12.200. So to give you an idea of where the site is located, the site in question is highlighted in blue here on this zoomed out aerial exhibit. The property is located on the western edge of the city of Chaska. It borders on the edge of the city of Chaska and with what is known as our orderly annexation area of the Laketown Township. So that line is defined in the orange and purple on this aerial here. The lot in question is technically within the city of Chaska. And then the purple line is where that orderly annexation area exists within the city. The property is within a subdivision known as Town Course Heights, which is highlighted in kind of this salmon color on this screen here. So it includes detached single family and attached townhome units within that subdivision. The zoning is PRD 42, Planned Residential District 42. The surrounding uses and proximities to the site. We have Pioneer Trail on the southern end of that development. We have Chaska Town Course, the golf course to the east of the property. We have additional detached single family directly north, and rural residential and a church on the western side. Here's a more zoomed in aerial view of the property if we need to refer back to it for any reason. In terms of background and some existing conditions related to this property, previous approvals, specifically with the subdivision, Town Course Heights, the plat, and then as well as the annexation into the city of Chaska was formally approved in April of 2002. And then subsequently, the subdivision was rezoned to PRD 42 as coded by ordinance number 746 in May of 2003. Within that ordinance, which codifies the zoning for the property, it does reference the city's standard R1A standards for setbacks that would apply to this lot specifically and other lots within the subdivision, which is formerly known as section 15.12.200. The setbacks defined within that section require a 30-foot front yard setback, a 30-foot rear yard setback, and then it varies for attached unenclosed decks, which need to adhere to a 20-foot rear yard setback, and then a side setback of 10 feet for the house and 7 feet for the garage side. In terms of existing conditions of this property in question this evening, the property totals 0.26 acres in size, which amounts to 11,325 square feet in area. In terms of what exists on the property today, there is a drainage and utility easement on the rear portion of the property that I'll show in a later exhibit. You will see that there is a slight what looks like an encroachment over that drainage and utility easement. However, it's just a 2-foot cantilever within that easement. So in terms of obstruction to the easement, there is no obstruction based on the layout of those elements. Currently, the lot consists of a 2-story home and then a partially built 3-season porch on the rear portion of the property. Currently, the porch is set back approximately 22 feet from that rear property line, which encroaches roughly 8 feet into that 30-foot building setback. The 3-season porch did start construction approximately in May of 2024 of this year with no building permit. And it was basically constructed over where the former attached unenclosed deck was. So per this aerial here, the attached deck is shown on the north side of the property on the rear portion of the lot. So again, as noted before, attached unenclosed decks require a 20-foot rear yard setback. And the former deck that was there was compliant with that as it was set back 22 feet from the rear property line. So that with the conversion of an enclosed 3-season porch over the existing deck requires a 30-foot setback for buildings. It did not comply with that 30-foot setback that is referenced for this zoning district. So in essence, the existing porch as it sits today is non-compliant and encroaches into that rear yard setback 8 feet. Excuse me. Here is that aerial exhibit again, just marked up with the dimension out there. So there is a 22-foot rear setback from the rear property line to the attached deck as shown in this 2024 aerial. And this is showing what it looked like prior to the porch conversion. And then this is a survey drawing just colorized to make it a little bit more readable in terms of some of the elements at play here, as well as where the existing 3-season porch sits. The yellow area is that drainage and utility easement that I noted before. And then the new 3-season porch sat over a portion of that former attached deck area, which is shown in the blue here. And again, that 22-foot setback is to that north edge of that 3-season porch. The 30-foot setback is shown in this red line here. And as you can see, it bifurcates almost through the middle of the 3-season porch. And the existing home is shown in gray or grayed out here. And there is a portion of some deck still remaining as a part of the 3-season porch design. So wanted to go over the sequence of events and what has led up to this variance application. The full sequence is laid out in the staff report, and I'm just going to mention kind of more of the significant events that have occurred up until this point, just in terms of timing and communication that has been completed between city staff and the contractor and the property owners. It does date back to March of this year, but more of the significant communication occurred or started in April of this year. And that's when the plans that were needed for the building permit review process to start were given to the city, and that was on April 22nd. And then our building inspector responded on May 3rd and did send an email that initially gave him approval verbally through that email and an invoice, but that was before they checked the setbacks. But not even a minute later, our inspector did send another email retracting the permit approval. The contractor, the permit was not approved due to the setback encroachment of the 3-season porch. And about a couple weeks later, after that communication was sent out to the contractor did come into City Hall to pay for a building permit. And he was greeted by Tony at that time that the building permit was not approved as per the email that was sent on May 3rd. And then it was middle of July 18th and 19th to be exact, that the city was notified of the porch construction underway and did go out to the property to inspect and did observe that the project was nearly complete. At that time, a stop work order was issued on the property by our building inspector, Tony, which was also followed by an email to the contractor to inform them of the stop work order. The property owner, Joe Heiland, was also copied at that time to inform them of that information. And then July 22nd, the contractor did come to City Hall to further discuss the stop work order with Tony. And he was reminded that the building permit was not approved. And at that time, he did admit to the fact that the work had started before they came in to pay for the permit at the end of May, and that they admitted to continuing work without a permit and not getting the necessary inspections that are required on that onset side of work. At that time, myself was included in that conversation with the contractor to discuss corrective options for the property. Which evolved to looking at tearing down or sizing down the porch to be compliant with the setback, or the other option would be to apply for a variance to get the deviation approved. At that time, I did inform the contractor that the variance application should only be applied for if they feel that the practical difficulty standard as defined by our variance ordinance and state statute is met. And due to the sequence of events and not obtaining a permit, that going through a variance application would be a difficult process to get approved. But it is still the right of the property owner to do that. And then July 29 is when the property owner emailed staff for setback information, and we did respond at that time. And then a little less than a month later, we did reach out to the property owner to get an update on the porch removal and or correction. And then it was September 12th that the property owner responded, stating that they were going to pursue a variance application. A day after that, we did supply the variance application materials, and again, restated that they should only pursue the variance application if they feel there's a strong case of practical difficulty being met. And then the 1st of October, that's when the official application came in for the variance. And that is where we are today. And this evening is reviewing that application. So the request this evening is for a variance from section 15.12 to 100, which states that there is a 30-foot rear yard setback requirement applied to R1A zoning districts, which the PRD 42 references in ordinance number 746. The applicant is proposing to maintain their rear yard porch addition that encroaches into the rear yard building setback. Right now, the porch is 22 feet from the rear property line, which is an 8-foot encroachment. And then the porch, again, was constructed without a building permit. So in planning terminology, this is considered an after the fact variance. So after it's been looked at or been constructed or constructed partially in this instance. The images on this slide show the existing layout or what's existing on the property today with what's been constructed with the 3-season porch. The 2 images show the east and west views of the porch from the property. Again, the porch itself sits 22 feet away from their rear property line. They do have a retaining wall and arborvitae screen on the rear portion of the property there. But it is open on either side to their neighboring property. Getting into the facts of the variance and how we review variance applications, it really gets down to Minnesota state statute requirement, which speaks to practical difficulty. The definition of practical difficulty is used in connection with granting of a variance, means that the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner, not permitted by the zoning ordinance. The plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner, and the variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the locality. Economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties, and they are to include, but are not limited to, inadequate access to direct sunlight for solar energy systems. There is that criteria is kind of split into 3 criteria as listed in the definition, but gets to reasonable development, conditions on the property that create a practical difficulty that are not present on similar sized lots in the same area and zoning district, and relationships with the abutting property that will not be adversely affected by the variance or alter the essential character of locality. And then these are another list of questions that can be used towards evaluating a variance request, but the 3 criteria listed ahead of this slide are kind of the bread and butter of a variance request review. So in terms of staff's evaluation, we look to each criteria and how the request either meets or does not meet those criteria as it relates to criteria 1. Which is to the reasonable use of what's being proposed. The applicant's request for a porch addition is a reasonable use. However, encroachment into the rear yard building setback is unreasonable. The 30-foot rear yard setback is a common setback that is found in most of the city's standard residential zoning districts. such as R1 and R1A. So this is not a unique setback that's being applied to this property, nor does it prohibit reasonable development on the property or the surrounding properties. Getting to the after the fact variance classification, the Minnesota Supreme Court had a similar case, which laid out factors that can be considered for after the fact variance requests. The ones kind of more relevant is looking to whether or not the non-compliance was willful or intentional, or whether it was unintentional mistake, including whether the applicant had faith or attempted to comply with the ordinance. Also looking at whether the construction was completed, whether there were similar structures in the area, and whether the governing body's benefits were outweighed by the applicant's burden if the applicant were required to comply with the ordinance. Related to those pieces, the city did promptly notify the applicant on at least 2 different occasions of the setback encroachment, and a building permit was never issued. So in that instance, the city believes the construction of the porch was done consciously without a permit, which is pretty critical in terms of starting work. And then regardless of those factors, the city still retains discretion in deciding whether to grant a variance, so long as the facts in the record reasonably support the city's interpretation of practical difficulty standards. So it really, again, puts the discretion on the city to weigh in how the request meets the practical difficulty definition as stated in the 3 criteria. In sum, for criteria 1, staff believes it is not being met. Getting to criterion 2, which generally relates to unique circumstances not created by the landowner on the property. Staff's opinion is that unique circumstances do not appear to exist on the property that impact the request to build a porch. The only observed unique circumstances that is not controlled by the applicant or the property owner is the drainage and utility easement that exists on the rear portion of the property. However, this easement is not more restrictive than the rear yard setback. In other words, it falls outside of the 30-foot rear yard setback. So it doesn't prohibit or it's not more restrictive than that rear yard setback. The subdivision Town Course Heights contains similar sized lots within the development. It has the same rear yard setback of 30 feet. The lot in question is 0.26 acres and is not uniquely smaller than the other lots in the subdivision. The graphic shown on this screen here shows the averaging acreage of the surrounding lots within the detached single-family portion of this subdivision. There are smaller lots within the subdivision. So in staff's opinion, it does not evoke unique characteristics compared to other lots within the area. And additionally, the nonconformance is a result of actions of the applicants through the contractor as their acting agent. So the circumstance that as a result of this variance request has been created by the applicant. So in sum, staff believes criterion number 2 is not met. And then criterion 3, essential character of the locality, staff believes is altered, granting a variance to encroach into the rear yard setback can set a negative precedence to the neighborhood and to the community, not based on substantial characteristics that set it apart. In essence, other properties within this neighborhood or with similar conditions of this property could seek a variance request for a similar request related to the rear yard setback. And generally, the spatial relationships neighboring properties would be altered as a result of granting this variance, potentially other similar variances, if the variance is granted this evening. So in sum, criterion number 3 is not met. Just a couple other comments related to the variance request. Because the project did not receive a building permit, granting the variance could send a bad message that variances are a tool to remedy the result of creating a nonconformity from the result of not obtaining a building permit. The request that in front of us does not stem from uniqueness of the property, rather a result of unfortunate circumstances that were controlled. The city is not obligated to grant a variance for a completed project that did not receive a building permit. The request still needs to adhere to variance standards, such as practical difficulty as defined by state statute and the city zoning code. If the variance is denied by city council, the applicant will be responsible to correct the setback encroachment. In other words, tear down the porch or the section of the porch that is in violation. In staff's opinion, we don't believe there is a practical difficulty that exists on the property or for the request, and therefore a variance should not be granted based on the following findings. The property in question can be put to reasonable use under the current regulations and setbacks. There are no unique physical constraints on the property which would put the applicant in a position of not reasonably using their property per this request. The variance is greater than necessary to reasonably use the property. There are reasonable alternatives for a building addition, meeting setbacks that should be explored. The variance, if granted, will alter the essential character of the area by allowing a smaller rear yard setback. A rear building addition encroaching into the minimum building setback would set a negative precedence for other homes that have the same rear yard setback or similar lot sizes within the area. The variance, if granted, is contrary to the city zoning ordinance, section 1512-200, which requires a 30-foot rear yard setback. And then lastly, the variance, if granted, would set a negative precedence for projects that do not obtain a building permit. So with that, staff is making a motion to recommend denial of the major variance request and encroach into the rear yard setback 8 feet. As per zoning ordinance 1512-200 for the purpose of an existing porch addition that did not receive a building permit. And then this motion for your recommendation would go to city council based on the findings listed on the last slide and defined in the staff report. If this moves forward this evening, whether that's recommendation of denial or recommendation of approval, it would go to city council on Monday, November 18th. Happy to answer any questions. We do have the applicants in the audience too to help answer questions if you have any for them. Thank you.
So this is a public hearing, but before we get to that, does anybody have any questions for Liz?
I have one. Liz, for city tax purposes, is the space of a 3-season porch considered living space?
Yes.
So it's considered livable space.
Yes,
For-
per building code, it is. I can't really say in terms of tax purposes. That would be more of a county question to them,
Stuff.
but per building code, yeah. Mhm.
Any other questions for Liz? No? Do we want to have the applicants up or open the public hearing? Or
It's up to you.
I think the procedure I'd recommend is you open the public hearing and then the applicants can come up as part of that public hearing. And anyone else who wants to speak on it.
So it's 7:30 PM. We will open the public hearing now and ask that the applicants come up and share their story.
Thank you very much. Elizabeth, thank you for the synopsis. I can toss out half my speech. Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Joe Heiland, and along with my wife, Michelle here, we are asking for the city of Chaska to consider approving a variance request that will allow us to complete a 3-season porch addition on the back of our home at 2979 Hilltop Drive in the Town Course Heights neighborhood, where we have been residents since 2003. Heard the synopsis of how things went down as far as the permit application and denial. I just want to provide some input as far to that. As the homeowners, we had never been notified by our contractor or the city that the permit for the porch was not approved until Tony Zappa's arrival at our home on July 18th. We've been acting in good faith that all necessary permits were sorted out between our contractor E&S and the city. If we had been made aware of the permit status on May 3rd, we would have put a stop to the project and explored other options. However, at the time of the stop work order being issued, the porch was approximately 80 to 90% completed. We feel that the city council has the ability to approve our variance request without creating a precedent for future variances. As an example, the Marin County, California variance process states that because each variance is based upon special circumstances relating to the site for which it is proposed, the past grant or denial of variances for other properties in the area does not mandate similar action on the part of the hearing body. The smaller lot sizes permitted in our Town Course Heights neighborhood due to the passing of Ordinance 746 have put our lots at a disadvantage when it comes to meeting the 30-foot setback requirement. This disadvantage was not created by us, the property owners. Coupled with the fact that we were not aware of the permit status until the porch was near completion, we feel that there are special circumstances applicable to our property that should allow for the granting of the variance. We thank you all for the opportunity to meet with you tonight and look forward to our discussion and exploring what options are available to move forward.
Any questions for Joe or Michelle?
How long have you been planning the 3-season porch or the transition from the deck to the?
That's a story.
It started around the beginning of COVID. We started taking the deck apart and just intending to replace the floorboards with a maintenance-free product. Talking with some friends in the construction industry, they had floated the idea of a 3-season porch. Our backyard, as you've seen by the photos, is quite limited in space. We thought we would maximize the space as much as possible and have a space that we could use in the spring and fall months. So we started kind of a do-it-yourself project, just replacing the floorboards. COVID hit, material prices went through the roof, and that kind of stayed in a unfinished mode until this spring when we finally made the decision to reach out to a contractor and leave.
Are you the original owner of the property?
Yes.
So you
built a home in 2003.
construction when you purchased it?
Correct.
Okay, so lot size and all that, you were aware of the
Well, I would
of the
like to
easement
say,
or of the 30-foot setback?
we were like 24, 25. I saw this like lot that wasn't built on. I'm like, this is amazing.
Mhm.
And then when the house went up, just being ignorant, like not thinking of how like big the house would be. I was super disappointed with the end result of the yard, but I mean, that was my own ignorance, just not understanding.
So the 30-foot setback is not a new thing. It's been around for how long?
I think it was established the year that we moved in,
Mhm.
2003.
Right,
Thank you.
on the onset of building out there.
That was part of that PUD, right? I'm sure you guys don't want to be here tonight. I know none of us are looking forward to dealing with this one either. What's your contractor say on this?
He may be on Zoom. See, there's a couple people on, he was gonna try to join.
And just so you know that we did, all the, letters of support were in our file. So
Yeah,
we all
yeah,
have
we
those.
get letters from all of our neighbors who could actually see it surrounding us, and they're all in support. I mean, I know this isn't like legal jargon of making the case, but I mean, we've put a lot of money into this, which I know isn't matter, but like from our standpoint, we've invested tens of thousands of dollars. And it just seems like really sad to take the porch down at this point and be out that kind of money. Like if this was, we, you know, in the very beginning and we were told no, it would just been a non-issue, but like we didn't know and we've invested a ton of money and I just like can't imagine tearing it down at this point.
So you weren't aware until July, you said that?
Correct.
Yeah,
You don't dispute the fact that your contractor knew that much earlier.
Oh, yeah, we've, afterwards, yeah. Yeah,
I
and
think he
they,
was going in good faith though initially, because I think, if he's online, he should speak, because I'm probably not gonna get the story straight. I mean, I know initially he thought it was approved and he went ahead and even got the engineering drawings, which are like $1,000, because he thought the permit was approved, so he actually paid for the $1,000 engineering drawings or whatever. I think at some point though, in the building process, he did find out. And then, you know, there was still work done after that.
which was not our intent at all from the beginning. We had every intention that the communications with our contractor was that permits were taken care of. In hindsight, I really wish I would have had him physically show that to me when starting the project, but that's my bad. I thought it was all taken care of.
Any other questions for the applicants here? Anything else for us?
I don't think so. I think it's just as you're considering it, just put yourself in our shoes in the situation and
Absolutely.
how would you feel? I guess it's kind of what we want to get across. So,
Thank you.
and we thank you for your time.
Coming in.
So the contractor's not,
Yeah, do we have somebody online as a contractor?
There is one guest, I'm not sure if it's the contractor, so if the guest, or if the contractor is online, you can raise your hand and give you the ability to speak. I'm not seeing anything, so.
Okay. Anybody else?
In his defense, he does have a child in the hospital, so it wasn't just a no-show because
Okay,
he didn't want to show, he did want to be here, but that children's hospital. And it's
okay. Anybody else want to speak during the public hearing? Please identify yourself and your address, please.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Brian Wisdorf, Wisdorf. I live at 2997 Hilltop Drive, just up the street from the Highlands here. I received my card in the mail indicating of tonight's hearing and decided that I would take a look at the materials submitted in your packet as well as check out the situation myself. I reviewed the materials and I'm here in support of the variance that is requested. I respectfully disagree with the analysis and recommendation contained in the staff report. And this is based upon my 20 years of real estate experience dealing with variances since backdating from February of this year. I used to represent property owners as well as cities associated in dealing with and addressing variance requests, either pre or after the fact. In reviewing the city code as well as the statute, the practical difficulties issue staff used is very Chaska Heights development was associated with the plat that the developer used in order to build the number of lots or building residential units on this lot, on these lots that would allow them to maximize, obviously, the number of lots they could sell. When it comes to practical difficulty, the flight of the landowners, has to be due to circumstances unique to the property. Staff focused again on this particular plan unit development. And the interesting thing about the ordinance itself, that was ordinance 746, is it appears that was passed after the platting of the properties. Usually they go hand in hand. I'm not quite sure why that is, but ultimately, when we look at these city's ordinance requirements for here it is. For this area, ultimately it's under the current code, it's a minimum of 11,500 square feet with an average of 15,000 square feet. That's what one would anticipate in looking at lots in the city of Chaska. When this ordinance 746 was passed, they allowed the developer to create smaller lots of 11,200 for 20 lots within block 5, which includes my lot, which includes the Highlands lot. And it also even allowed even smaller lots to be in the R1 district. So ultimately, when they approved this development, ultimately said, we're going to allow you to put houses on smaller parcels of property. Now, when you have the R1 and the R1A, in this case, when the city approved the ordinance and said, well, we're going to allow you to have lots with smaller square footage, that it ultimately allowed the property owners or the developer to put in there houses that didn't meet the square footage that would otherwise be required. In this development, there are 20 lots that are identified as R1A. 6 of those lots are below the 11,500 that our current code would otherwise require, okay? That in and of itself makes the property unique. And that wasn't a situation created by the property owner. When they approved it, yes, they kept the required setbacks of 30 feet, but ultimately, by making it a smaller lot, or allowing the smaller lot, and keeping the setbacks as what would normally apply to the 11,500 square foot minimum requirement, created a crunching of the property for purposes of the property owner, making it more difficult for them to build what they're seeking to build. Which makes it practically a practical, unique situation, not created by the property owner. For those reasons, I think you as a planning commission and city council have a basis to find a unique situation here for the Highlands and permit them to move forward with their 3-season porch. And going to the unique circumstances of this case relied upon by staff, the issue of the Highlands being informed through their contractor It's not that, I think they've pointed out that they weren't informed in May when the contractor or when the building inspector informed the contractor that, one, your permit was approved, and then two, your permit isn't approved anymore because you looked at the setback. Nor was anyone ever coming out to the property that, based upon the sequence of events in their report, to inform the Highlands that, hey, look, don't be doing anything on your property because we've now determined that nothing can be done according to the plan that was submitted. As Mr. Heiland presented tonight, it was news to him when the building inspector showed up in his driveway and asked him questions about it. That too makes it somewhat unique. I don't think it happens very often where a contractor or a property owner are informed that your permit's been granted and then later on informed that it's not. So it's some unfortunate circumstances that have arisen here based upon the sequence of events that did occur. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you're left dealing with an after the fact variance. And after the fact variance is not ideal for anybody. It's not something that is preferred, obviously, and is not to be promoted. However, when there is unique circumstances associated with the parcel itself that would otherwise permit that variance to be granted, had they come in the beginning. If you go back in time and you looked at it in those circumstances and said, is this a unique situation for the Highlands who were before you in that at that point in time, there is a basis to make it unique to this situation, to make it unique to them that would not necessarily promote people like myself, who would also arguably is on a small lot under the 11,200 square feet, according to the county records. But ultimately, in any of those cases, whether it's me that's on that small lot, we would still have to come before you and state our case as to what it is we wanted to do. Why is it a practical difficulty? How does it meet those other guidelines? That by you approving theirs doesn't rubber stamp anything for me or any of the other property owners when it comes to variances. We still would have to go through the process for purposes of obtaining any such variance. Thank you.
Any questions for Brian before he leaves? No? Thank you, Brian. Anybody else online?
If you're online and you wish to speak, you can raise hand function and we can unmute.
Nothing? All right. We'll close the public hearing at 7:49 PM and more discussion with our commission here.
When they get issued a permit, isn't there a signage that gets put on the site? And it has to be signed off for every like
Mhm.
electrical or plumbing or footing, stuff like that. So there wasn't, you didn't see one of these. You didn't know that those are usually applied on.
We've seen it done before, but we weren't aware that it was a requirement to have it physically posted outside. That was what we've done. One project in our house, finished basements, and then we had permit applied for that. And it was out all this time, but. Yeah, I chalk it up to, I guess, life and the speed of things moving too fast, and we just did not ask those questions.
But so he knew there was no permit, but he decided to go on his own and finish the construction.
Unbeknownst to us.
That's all.
Liz, what prompted the 2-month gap between the visit between the contractor pay and the building inspector going out on the 18th of July? Basically, the contractor came in middle of May to pay for it and he said no. And then 2 months later, the building inspector goes to the site and sees and obviously puts the stop order. So what spurred the visit and the 2-month gap for that?
Yeah, I mean, between that, and I can only speak on indirectly, but once the message was given to the contractor that the building permit was not approved when they came in to pick it up, the ball was back in their court to correct their plans to resubmit to the city. I don't know if that was something that was mentioned by the contractor at that time that they would work on that. But ultimately, the city was notified by an electrical inspector that the work was being completed there, and they were following up with the city to see if there was a permit on file for that. And so that's when the city was notified that the work was happening.
I mean, yeah, first of all, it's really sad to see, like, after spending a lot of money and they wanted to go through this process. I'm really sorry for that. But like, suppose if we are considering all these, this particular lot is a special, or like all these criteria are met, or whatever the reason, it's not about like someone else is coming in. Yeah, definitely there is like opening a can of worms. I mean, someone else can easily build something else and say, yeah, I have some other difficulties, and my neighbors are okay to build whatever I wanted. Because most of the time, like some of the neighbor, maybe my neighbor is my friend, because generally they live together for a long time. They don't want it to oppose or anything if it is not bothering them, right? That is one thing. And another thing, it's not about residents, because at the end of the day, residents, that's okay, we can consider their request. But we might give the free hand to the contractors who are like actually going to do these similar kind of things to other residents, and just ignoring about the process and simply go and build whatever they wanted to, and just try to, I mean, do whatever the way they wanted to build it. That is more things we need to consider here. Like, we definitely need to make sure like contractor is responsible for whatever the actions we had here in this case, rather than like, I mean, we definitely have to see in that perspective more than like the resident perspective. So
What are the alternatives that staff has provided versus tear it all down, tear it half down? What else is there? I'm trying, I'm
Getting creative, yeah.
what creative things can happen here that still fall in line, that, because I want to, I want to, but at the same time, it's it's not so much on setting the precedent. I got past that one long ago, because we last month. So needless to say, we go by the whim. So, but I'm looking for, what is the solution? How can we get through this without getting to the point of, because a 7-foot 3-season porch is nothing. I mean,
Right.
nobody is going to do that.
No.
I mean, nobody. I mean, So what alternatives are there? Because they're putting it on the same footprint of the deck that was there. It's just that now it has walls and a roof. And I am just trying to get my head around the concept of what is materially different from a deck to a three-season porch. And put aside, it's already built. If this was coming to us as a plan for a request for a variance as a plan, what is really different? And now I'm kind of pushing on city code. What is really different between a three-season porch and a deck? Because it doesn't have footing. I mean, besides, it's still going to be on footing, the same footings of a deck. It's not going to have a foundation. So it's not going to have a basement. It's still going to be on stilts.
I think it's a structure.
So
I think that's what you were trying to say.
And I read that as into more of a permanent thing, but a deck is a permanent thing as well too. So I mean, you still have to maintain it. So I'm trying to get my head around that side of it. And that's where I was, like I said, I was putting aside the fact that it was already built and just kind of going with the why is there a distinction between a deck and an enclosed porch? And if it was, is there a difference between something that's just got screens versus, so where's the delineation between an enclosed porch versus a three-season porch versus a deck? Where's,
What qualifies for the 30-foot? What qualifies for the 40-foot?
right,
If you could just maybe explain that.
right.
Yeah, I mean, the deck is an unenclosed deck. So something that does not have a roof and walls is technically what is considered for that 20-foot setback.
So and walls.
Roof and walls, whether it's screened or walled, puts it into that 30-foot setback requirement.
So if somebody had a deck and put a pergola on top of it, that would be an enclosed deck.
A pergola?
Yeah.
No, that's just that's an open structure.
Okay.
Yep.
Like I said, I'm going through the creative side of things as into what is and what isn't,
Mhm.
so.
I believe that's what they had before on their deck, was a pergola.
No, you didn't.
You didn't, okay.
There are
It
examples.
looks deceiving on the aerial exhibit.
Yeah,
but-
you were looking at just the frames. You were just looking at the.
Okay.
Original.
So coming to that, like, what are the other options contractor actually provided to you? Like, if it is not going in the right direction, I mean, are they going to provide any additional options? Like this might be the next step or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, I think the deck.
If you can come up to the microphone, sorry. They don't pick up everything on audio.
Um,
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think there are any real good options. I mean, we could shorten it by 8 feet. But like you mentioned, it's gonna be 6 or 7 feet long. So we could make it like 6 or 7 feet and then make it like way wider, but that's not interesting to me. I mean, I wanna like have a table, eat dinner out there and I just wouldn't be something like I wouldn't like, that would be like absolute last resort, but it wouldn't be something I would want. I don't know, someone mentioned to us, like, if you unattach it, so just take off however it is tied to the house, then it just becomes a independent structure. I don't know, it sounds crazy, but like, I don't know if that's an option. Like, you just detach it from the house and then it doesn't count anymore. I don't know if that's true or not, but.
Kids playhouse?
Is there any other ideas?
Tony Zappa brought that up the day he showed up in my driveway. We didn't explore that path because, we had at first started communicating, when we found this out and we had heard from Liz and team, we had asked what options are available. And step number one was the variance. And that's the route that we took. Haven't really explored any other options with the contractor yet.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Campbell, you have something?
Was the deck original on the house or did you have that built
That was
somewhere?
built shortly after, what I would say, yeah, a couple of years after.
Okay. Did you do it yourself or went through the building permit process?
We did pull a permit, but it was kind of done with the assistance of a friend of mine who was in the construction trade at that time.
So you knew what setbacks were for that deck?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, we were aware of that, we're not aware of the setbacks change when once a road was long.
Okay. I get that part. Yeah.
We had thought same footprint, there shouldn't be any issues, but here we are.
We have seen similar case, like someone wanted to put a sports court or something under the deck. They wanted to take off the deck or something like that, right? I mean, I remember like a couple of years back. Yeah. They thought the same thing, like they just wanted to tear the deck off and just put exact same size of the sports court in their home and
Right.
Go ahead.
One of the things, so there was a letter from the house directly behind, said the arborvitae's, the sight lines, no big deal. What about the other homes on the other sides of you? I didn't see those letters, or there was one.
There
maybe.
should be a total of 3 letters submitted in the packet. I believe I saw them online. But yeah,
behind too.
we received letters of support from behind our home as well as to the left and right of us as well. I also included photos of shots from their backyards towards our yard to just kind of give you a feel for what the visibility would be like with the neighboring properties as well.
I'm gonna think outside the box here a little bit. Would it be possible for the Highlands to purchase land from the house behind them?
Yeah.
Extend the lot, but that's a different township there also.
It's,
And then everything would have to be replatted.
yes.
Um,
I mean, that technically, yes, but I also where their setbacks sit in relation to their deck
Right.
and building
The reconstruction.
could put them in
it's
violation. of
more
the-
expensive to go that route then too. Okay, just wanted to ask a question. Thank you. Any other comments?
What happens with the insurance when there's no permit?
Yes, it's an.
I think that's a good question for the insurance company.
Yeah.
No disrespect. That interesting question. I guess we're not prepared to answer
Added
that.
square footage to the house, correct?
Excuse me?
Added square footage to the house.
Finished square-
And
square
yes.
footage, yeah.
Correct. Yep.
My thought is if there's no permit, the insurance company may pull the insurance.
Or they wouldn't call it a
Yeah,
loss.
I can't.
Right
speak
now
for
they're
what
going
Insurance
through
company would
Right
do.
now they're going through the approval process.
Right.
So, and until they get the denial. So, and I think this is the part where I'm gonna go back to where I started, which is it feels like staff has 2 different lanes, one for residential and one for industrial and commercial when it comes to and I'll say variances, doing something different for the property at hand. You knew I was gonna say this, so last month with Cloud HQ, the property was zoned for 36-foot building. They knew it, city staff, we approved something larger. We approved something larger that property was zoned and it was written for something smaller. Somebody else came and said, I want to build something bigger, and we let it because they asked. This, and I sit here in the very next meeting and yes, the contractor did what the contractor did. But they're asking to put a 3-season porch on the same footprint of a deck that they had on the back of their house. It's not changing the character of the neighborhood. It's not impacting anything. Their neighbors are all in support of it. And it's only because it's going from an open deck to something that's got 4 walls that it changes in the code. And that's the part where I have the biggest heartburn.
Well,
And
But going to,
and going back to, it's like, we can look at this in its just itself and say that this request can be viewed just like the one we looked at last year with the sports court, can be looked at itself on its merits to be able to say, can it be approved or not?
okay, so,
He was first.
okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, definitely everything is a different case, but I mean, I strongly disagree with whatever the point we make it here. I mean, the Cloud HQ building, yes, I understand it's 36 foot size, but like there is a mitigation plan in place, which we are like which presented to the staff and presented to us. And we have the option to say yes or no based on our discretion. And we thought like, because they are providing another, see, if they wanted to build a simple math, like if they wanted, they have some structure here, this height, and they wanted to build a 30-foot berm to compensate whatever the extra height they are asking for. I mean, if they are not just simply, okay, with the 36 feet, and someone, whoever is having a house behind that, they see like 36 feet. But now they are building another 30 foot to make exactly whatever the variance they are asking. They are trying to make it right to make the exact building size, whatever it looks like that. So, and at the same time, I mean, at least my understanding, staff can provide whatever the information they can provide. At the end of the day, we are the ones to take the decision. I think we did have conversations, a lot of conversations on that. I understand. I mean, it's not like exactly. So whatever the point we are coming here, see, I feel for the homeowners, they are blindsided. But at the same time, tomorrow or the next month, we shouldn't be hearing the same thing like, yeah, we came to know that last month someone got the variance. Why not me? Why not my property? Right? I mean, that property was different, property was different, that decision was different, this was different. It's not like, I mean, staff provided for that. I feel like we shouldn't be blaming on them because they are just providing the facts. It's again, we are taking the decision based on whatever the facts we understand. So, I mean, it's today again, at the same time, we all decided to have vote against it or against the staff recommendation. It's up to us, right? I mean, because we had a conversation, we shouldn't be again bringing the same thing and saying blaming. That makes the discussion, whatever the time we put in, I mean, it's not in a good faith. That's what I feel.
Thank you.
I know you were not overly, I don't know, concerned about the precedent so much. But again, okay, 8 foot, okay, somebody else with a smaller lot size, okay, I want, my 10 foot, my porch, so that's the concern is, okay, where do we draw the line on that? And we're talking about houses, within close proximity to each other versus, as he rightly said about the Cloud HQ discussion. That's my concern is these houses, and I, did my little drive through and took a look at the spaces we're talking about. And I think it's incredibly unfortunate that the contractor was not, upfront with you. That's very unfortunate. But again, I kind of have to look at the precedents as well as you said, is okay, the next person comes along or the next contractor comes along and said, hey, I got a good way to get you, an even bigger portion. Not that, but so 10 foot, 12 feet, so I can't get past that piece of it. So.
Thank you. My thoughts on this and, I look at, there wasn't a mistake made here, there was a decision made. And you guys didn't make the decision, right? And there were two decisions made, one on May 3rd, when he decided to disregard the email, and one when 3 weeks later, when he came in to pay for the permit. He made the decision not to tell you guys that the permit was denied and just kind of rolled the dice hoping that it went to 5. My issue here is if we approve this, we basically give all contractors across the city the right to come in, build something and come back later and say, well, we're sorry, we probably should have done this differently and we'll do it right next time. It does open a precedent that way. So, absolutely.
I think we can fix the issue going forward if we include the homeowners as part of the communication process with the city and the permit application. Like no notification from anybody in May or July or whatever the timeframes were when the city communicated with the contractor. There was never any communication from either parties to us.
And the city isn't tasked with making sure that if we don't give a permit, it's not our job to come out to a house and see what's going on the back side of a house. We didn't give the permit. The permit is there so that we can do the inspections during that 4 to 8 week building process to make sure the framing's correct, make sure windows are installed correctly, make sure the deck's attached to the house, make sure the roof is installed properly. None of that was done, so none of your inspections were done either then. And it, again, my big thing with this is the precedent that it would set for the rest of the city that way. I'm sorry.
Understand.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or comments? If not, I'll look for a motion to either approve or deny the variance.
Nobody wants to speak up?
Yeah.
Okay.
This
Yeah,
really sucks, because I totally feel for them.
It's like, we're the ones that are gonna be penalized, like,
Right.
he's gonna be out some money, we're gonna be out a lot more money. You know, so I feel like we're being penalized and not.
Well, but you at least have some legal, unfortunately, there's gonna be cost to that as well too. So unfortunately, but that's a long road to go. So I'm gonna make a motion to recommend denial to the major variance request for the encroachment on the backyard setback for 8 feet for the purpose of existing porch addition. Zoning ordinance 15.12.2 did not receive the building permit to the city council based on the following findings.
No, second.
Perfect. Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
So next steps is this it or, because my understanding is it goes to the council, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll have you.
So if I may, so this is, the planning commission is reviewing and making a recommendation to city council. So, you know, the next step will be, is it next Monday?
Yeah, it's next Monday.
Next Monday is the city council meeting. This will be brought forward to them. Council makes the ultimate decision. So they'll consider planning commission's recommendation, staff's presentation. It won't be a public hearing, so there's no obligation for council to take comment. They typically do. So you know, you'd be, you know, well positioned to be prepared to speak to them if you want to. And I'm sure they'll hear you out.
Thanks, guys. Good luck. Moving on to number 8, other business. Any other business that anybody wants to talk about? No? Okay. Number 9, receive other meeting minutes from September 16th and October 7th, city council meeting minutes. Those are also not on our agenda or not attached. So I'll need a motion from somebody to,
So just received, not received yet.
yeah.
December.
Looks like Rob gets to do a lot.
Can we just carry those over to the next meeting, please?
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
do that. I mean, that particular item, we'll bring them forward. Those minutes are posted in the other agendas and as they're receiving them and things, this is more of a courtesy for you all to stay attuned as to what's going on.
But they were not received.
Yeah, so you can acknowledge they were not received, and we'll, catch you up to speed next month. So
Perfect.
sorry about that.
Yep. Apologies.
Good.
Thanks for letting us know.
See when we actually started looking.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm impressed you're noticing.
Yes,
So
we
victory
appreciate
for you.
that.
Right? 100 and some odd pages. Anything else from anybody? If not, I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn first, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Easier.